Jeff has been the chief of Maryland State Highway Agency's Pavement Engineering Division since 2008, prior to which he worked as the pavement design engineer. Overseeing the pavement management and pavement design sections, he has led the transformation from a worst first rehabilitation focus to a balanced asset management focus using pavement preservation. A registered engineer, Jeff has served on multiple NCHRP panels, and has been actively involved in the Northeast Pavement Preservation Partnership. Please help me welcome Jeff Hall.
All right, so what I'm going to talk about is our perspective on pavement condition data, and specifically how it relates to pavement preservation. So, as we've implemented pavement preservation, questions I've frequently heard, there's two key ones. One is, how long do they last? Another one is, how can we get to use them more? Well, the key to that lies in having good condition data. We need that to be able to really competently answer those questions. So what I'm going to do today is go over why pavement condition data, and specifically condition data that is relevant to pavement preservation, matters. And go over the types of data that we need and also the quality of it, because they are very important parts of it. All right, so why does relevant to preservation condition data matter? Well, as you've heard from previous presentations this morning, many agencies, or state agencies and others who have to preserve the roads, they have focused on doing the worst ones first. They focus on roads that basically need rehab. These are roads that are too far gone to do preservation, so by the time they're even identified, preservation is not even an option. And also the data that we've been collecting historically is geared towards rehabilitation. One of the primary ones that everybody does now and has to do for MAP 21, like ride quality, those stuff are geared towards preservation. Most of the rehabilitation. Most of the preservation treatments, they don't fix ride quality. They're not intended to. And so based on that history, it is really difficult to justify not picking the worst roads. And if we're doing that, preservation has no shot. So how can we move the focus away from rehab over to preservation? Well, there's a couple different ways. One is you need to have a balanced approach when you develop your program of what roads you're going to pick. Don't just pick the worst roads. Pick a mix of the good, fair, and poor roads. And for those decision makers who don't want to get away from the worst first, we need to actually provide them justification for doing something else. How do we do that? How do we pave that perfectly good road when the road next to it is falling apart? Well, the key to it is the benefit to cost ratio. If we can get the most bang out of our dollars spent, that'd be a good way to justify picking a road that's in better condition to fix. And the key part of that is the benefit. Cost is easy enough to figure out. We have loads of information on that. The benefit is the tricky part. To do that, you need to have the right type of data, not just ride quality or something that is intended for rehabilitation, but you need to also have a good quality data. Because preservation treatments we're typically doing when the roads are in good condition, when basically it's at the top of the curve, at the deterioration curve. So there's really very little room for error of how good that data's got to be. So talking about the type and quality of data, first of all, it needs to be objective and reliable. And to do that, you need to have automatic detection. If you're doing a visual surveys for that, you're not going to get objective data. You know, I've heard and seen, if you have 5 different pavement experts who've been rating pavements for years, if they rate the same exact piece of roadway, you're going to get 5 different answers. If you want to have it objective and reliable, you need to have it done automatically. It also needs to be useful and repeatable. We need to do that to be able to trend and project going forward how the pavements are going to act. So why are the type and quality important? Well, if you don't have the right type of data, it's going to be very difficult to identify preservation treatments. So if you're just collecting ride quality, for map 21, for the proposed rules, if it's a non-interstate NHS roadway, the only thing that matters for condition is ride quality. That's what the rule is going, well, we'll see what the final rule is, but that's what the proposed rule is. But if you're doing just that, you're never going to be able to identify preservation candidates. You're never going to be able to justify keeping those good riding roads in good shape. And if your quality is lacking, you're not going to be able to have a cost-effective pick. If the road's in better shape in reality than what your data shows is, you're kind of throwing your money away. And if it's in worse shape than what your data shows, then it's probably too far gone for that preservation treatment. So you need to have the good, tight data. Now, if either of those things happen, preservation's not going to be chosen, especially for agencies where they don't really have a history or desire to do preservation treatments. If they want to keep on doing the worst first, they're going to. So things that we've frequently heard in Maryland from our districts were the name your preservation treatment here, it doesn't last long enough. Well, it may not last as long as an asphalt overlay, but it can be significantly cheaper too. But with that mindset that they have, and without our data showing that it does last long enough, preservation will not get chosen. So we need to prove that wrong. And to do that, we need to quantify how long it does last in terms of extending the performance, and we also need the quality data. So here we have a typical performance curve where over time it deteriorates from really good shape until close to failed if you do nothing. But at some point you can place a treatment, the condition gets better, and then it ages over time. And the way we measure performance extension is just the time, that little dash line of what it was right before you put the fix until it's in that same condition again. So that's one way to measure the extension. But then the key here is, how is that condition measured? Those diagonal lines, what is that condition? And different agencies have different measures for that. Is that just ride quality? Is it just cracking? Is it some overall combination? Really, how you define that will go a long way for helping preservation. But really, there are several ingredients that make up condition, and it's important to distinguish and collect all of them. And I don't think anybody does that. I know nobody does that on a network level or with automated equipment because the technology, as far as we know, is not there yet. But you need all of that to be able to really, truly capture the effects of pavement preservation. All right, so what I'm going to do now is go into some distresses that can be fixed or at least slowed by preventive maintenance. I just picked out of the old pavement condition index guide where they have 19 different distress types for asphalt and for concrete. I'm just going to pick on asphalt because we only have 1 or 2% of our network is concrete. So, but if we can identify these distresses, these certain distresses on a network level and with automated equipment, then we can have a much better chance at implementing preservation. All right, so the first one is block cracking. That's definitely not a structural distress, so it's something that preservation can fix or at least slow. Can we collect this on a network level? Well, the answer is no. And it's because we need a reliable way to distinguish between structural cracks and superficial cracks. And right now with automated equipment, at least with a visual survey of the automated equipment, they can't tell whether it's a structural crack or just in the surface. So at this point I was thinking, this is not good. I want to have thought of somebody who could give a good scowl. I think, who's got a good scowl? Clint Eastwood. So this is us being upset that we can't collect this distress. Next one is joint reflective cracking, where we have and about 40% of our network is a composite pavement. And for those roads, this is by far the distress that controls when we have to fix the road, where the joints are reflecting through the asphalt. Can we collect this on a network level? Yes, but we also need excellent inventory information. We need to know whether we have a flexible pavement under that or whether we have a composite pavement. And our as-built and documented records don't always match what's actually out there. So you need to have really good information on that. So here's Clint smiling. That's a yes. Next one is longitudinal transverse cracking. I'm just really going to focus on the longitudinal part. With the longitudinal cracks, our automated detection, it can't tell whether that's a structural crack going all the way through the pavement or is it just in the top half inch or top few inches. So can network level collection occur on that? Not really, because we cannot distinguish those types of cracks. So there's another scowl. Next one, oxidation. Can we collect network level information on that? Nope, nobody's been able to do that. That'd be a great one for preservation treatments. We can't determine that without looking at it on a project level, whether that's occurring. Polished aggregate. Can collection occur on that? Yes. But you need to be able to texture and a skid truck to really, truly do that. And we've had a skid truck for several years now. We just recently got our latest ARAN can do texture as well. So it's going to be new for us to be able to do that. So we'll give a smile for that one. Next one, rutting and ponding. We can collect that too. That's been around for a while. Raveling, can we collect that? For us, that's a maybe at this point. We need the texture and raveling detection, and that's something that those are new to us, and we still haven't really fully implemented that. And I'm saying no because the latest ARAN that we just got this past year. So here's Clint's maybe face. All right, so to sum up all those types of preservation-related or preservation fixable distresses, for block cracking and longitudinal transverse cracking, we would need reliable crack width. That's still a tough thing to get without a lot of post-processing. Network level deflection data would be great to have, and I'm understanding there might be a presentation on that later today. Crack sealant detection. We cannot reliably capture that right now to capture whether, so if a road got crack sealed and there is benefit to that, we can't identify that. Be able to detect whether you have layer bonding. Many of our roads, we have, oh, it looks terrible. It's cracking everywhere. But it turns out the surface just did not bond to the underlying layer. The underlying structure is fine, but this terrible road really is just, a minor mill and fill would be fine. If we could identify that on network level, that'd be very helpful too. Reliable crack width for reflective cracking. For oxidation, some way to measure that, change in the gray scale perhaps. For polish aggregate, we need the texture and skid truck. For rutting and ponding, the ARAN or something similar. And for raveling, you could use texture and raveling. All right, so what we currently collect in Maryland, we collect cracking, but we put that by zone. We have, for the longitudinal stuff, we have 2 wheel path zones, and for anything that's longitudinal in there, we say that's automatically a structural crack, whether or not that's the truth. Anything outside the wheel paths, we'll say those are, we call them functional cracks, non-structural, and anything that's transverse, we call that functional as well. We also collect rutting and skid, and we're going to be adding texture and raveling. And of course we do ride quality because we have to do that as well. But that really doesn't impact preservation. But what we could use for you industry and academics and such who want to make a lot of money in the future by inventing something is something to identify the aging network level deflection, network level layer bonding, and crack sealant detection. If you can come up with those, we'd be very, very happy. All right, so there are a whole host of preservation treatments, and I'm wondering, well, what treatments are actually affected by these missing data that we can't get? Well, the answer is pretty much all of them, and to some degree. So for example, we use microsurfacing. What does that fix or slow? Well, it could fix low severity surface cracks, and that's where the reliable crack detection width comes in handy. It could fix rutting, fix friction problems, aging, unraveling. Which of those can we collect? Low severity surface cracks, not so reliably. Aging, can't do that at all. So these are missed opportunities that we could use to program microsurfacing that we just can't identify right now. So get our Maryland guy in here. So that's a type of data, but there's more. The quality of the data is also equally important. Again, as I mentioned, if the road really is better than the condition says it is, you're wasting your money putting anything down. And if it's really worse, then it's too late and you're wasting your money again. So this other thing is, try not to mess this up too much, is what I call it the dog that didn't bark, borrowing from a Sherlock's Holmes thing. And that's where the crime was solved, because when the dog didn't bark, it was something that should have happened didn't happen, and by omission, that's how he solved it. So, so I'll get in a couple slides what I mean by that. So the life extending benefit of preservation, the way to measure that is the performance with preservation compared to what the performance would be without preservation. So going back to this performance curve, one way is, if you place a treatment, you get some measurable improvement and then it ages over time. Another way is you could place a treatment and you see no measurable improvement, but what it does is slow the deterioration down. And to measure the extension there, you just measure the difference at any point in time on the horizontal axis of what it could have been if you didn't do anything versus what it did when you did do something. And this is where you need really good quality data, because if you have just a little bit of error in your data, those curves are not going to be useful at all. And there are a lot of treatments that do that. They don't really give you any noticeable improvement in your pavement, but they do make it last longer. So really, for that concept to work, so this is where the dog that didn't bark come in. It's where you're comparing to your do-nothing curve, but you need your do-nothing curve to be very well, to be very high quality. All right, so the summary of what we need comes down to the question of, do you want preservation? And I imagine everybody at this conference does. If you want that, you got to have all these different types of information available to us during our network collection. Texture, raveling, ponding, color, layer bonding, network level deflection, reliable crack width, and crack sealant. And we need this data to be objective and reliable, repeatable, and fast. So it's got to be all as automated as can be. And once we have all that, we can determine how long each preservation actually lasts. We can answer that question. And we can, not just in generic terms, we can answer how long it lasts for friction, how long it lasts for superficial cracking, how long it lasts for even slowing down the deterioration and ride quality. We can answer all those individual questions for any given pavement. And then we can competently identify preservation candidates. We're working without some of this stuff, so we have our structural cracking and our functional cracking, we have skid. We can use the skid and all the non-structural stuff in our optimization models, and I put preservation treatments. We give them performance extensions and immediate impacts, and with that we can do a semi-competent job at identifying preservation candidates so we can program them in advance and make sure we have the funding available to them. I'd like to do that better once we have this additional information. All right, pop quiz. Anybody know who that is in the picture?
Frank Beamer.
It's me. Frank Beamer's next to me. Yeah, yes, Frank Beamer, the head coach of Virginia Tech football for the past 29 years. We went golfing earlier this spring. Well, I went. He just showed up at dinner later on. I went with a couple hundred people. He was there. Any questions? We measure the skid every year. On some, we do the short roads and ramps that are difficult to get to. We'll do those every 2 or 3 years.
What's the spacing of them?
Every 0.2 of a mile. Every 0.2 of a mile. And but I also like to, before I forget, give shout out thanks to my pavement management guru, Nate Moore. Nate, raise your hand, sitting in the corner. Anything pavement management related and preservation related, he knows the answers at least as well as I. All right, thank you.